Hey everyone, so we finally got the long-awaited Season 10 finale of The Walking Dead titled A Certain Doom. Was it worth the wait? Well, let's discuss everything in detail. I do have to warn you all that this will contain spoilers for the episode. I already posted a non-spoiler review. It's on the channel, so if you want to see a non-spoiler review of this episode, it's not this video, it's that one. It's a video I posted a couple days ago, so yeah, this is a complete spoiler talk and review video for The Walking Dead Season 10 finale. If you're new here to the channel and want more Walking Dead reviews like this, make sure to hit subscribe, because I will also be posting a Walking Dead World Beyond Season 1 premiere review, and man, do I have some thoughts on that show. So make sure to be a subscriber and turn your notifications on to be notified when that video drops. A Certain Doom was directed by the man Greg Nicotero, who is my favorite director of all time on The Walking Dead because he's directed some really great episodes. The story was written by Jim Barnes, Eli Yorn, and Corey Reed, if I'm saying all those names correctly. Those are names that are very familiar to the show. Like, they've been working on the show for quite a while now. We were supposed to get this episode back in April. April 12th was the exact release date, and we've waited 174 days for this episode. And the reason was because of post-production delays. They couldn't finish all the post-production work. Visually, I can tell that some work has been done on the episode, in terms of like color grading anyways. That's all I can really tell from my point of view, just based on the trailer that was released on April 5th. Comparing the same scenes then to what we see now in the episode, it visually looks a lot better. All the visual effects that were used on the walkers and etc., and a lot of that, crazy special effects there, that I can't really compare because we didn't see a lot of that back in April, right? So yeah, regardless, the episode visually looked beautiful, especially that one shot or scene of Carol looking over the cliff. One of the most powerful scenes in the episode. That was a beautiful scene. Now let's talk about the story. I do recommend, if you're watching this episode, to watch the previous 4 or 5 even, just because if you don't, you won't be brought into the seriousness of this situation as quick. Because the episode really jumps into the action really, really fast. There's no waiting around. There is an arc, in terms of setting up and planning, and then they execute the plan, and then afterwards is the final result of the plan. But the build to what this finale was supposed to be was set up in previous episodes. So does this episode work as a standalone episode? It definitely does, but if you're not watching previous episodes, it can feel like the episode is over and done very quick, because we've waited for so long, right? And then it's just over. Weirdly, the episode is just a standard runtime. It wasn't extended or anything. Maybe they had no new footage to add, like that would have been really nice. I think it would have made it feel like the wait was worth it. It still was, in my opinion, definitely. The episode was just a little too short though. Now we see Eugene and Yumiko and the rest get into this bike crash, then all these emotional things come up for Eugene. He doubts himself, but Ezekiel, of course, he gives his usual inspirational speech, and everyone cheers up, gets back up, and continues on this journey. My favorite line, I think, from this scene wasn't from Ezekiel, it was from Yumiko, who said, "Tomorrow's problems are for tomorrow." And that's some good shit right there. That's a lesson all of us need to learn. The plan in this episode is to make all the walkers go off the cliff. And to do that, they're going to create these wagons. Well, I guess the wagons were already created, but they were adding speakers to them, and they were going to blast music as loud as they can, which they did. And they played Burning Down the House from Talking Heads, which was probably, like, to be honest, this was probably my favorite scene in the whole season. I'm telling you, I love that song. I'm actually listening to it right now, or I was, while prepping this review. It was the perfect song, I think, to use, obviously, because you're burning down the house, you're burning down the Whisperers and the Walkers, and it made this world feel very real again. And you always got to do that here and there with the show, because all of this Whisperer stuff, people acting like walkers or zombies, and then you had King Ezekiel before with his tiger, and even the fact that he was a king, it's just stuff like that makes this whole world feel so fake and just not real, and you can't relate to it that much. And the show's always been very relatable. The earlier seasons were so relatable. It felt like the real world. Everything was so real, but you just added zombies to it, basically, right? Lately, it does feel a lot more real, but you do have some of that Whisperer stuff and just some of the comic booky stuff that it definitely makes it feel a little more fake and I guess fiction-like, right? Which obviously it's still fiction and zombies, I get that, but the song was just a nice touch, and even Daryl had a little smile. It looked like anyways during this scene, so yeah, he enjoyed it. He's totally a Talking Heads fan. Now, there are so many little things that I want to mention before getting into like the big events of the episode, like the introduction of the Commonwealth, Maggie's return, etc. First of all, Carol and Lydia, they made up, and they did plenty of times in the episode. It was nice to finally see this closure because they're like mother and daughter now, I would say. Carol finally found her Sophia again, and I do think that this is how her arc will end when the show ends in 2 years. She'll finally have her Sophia. We started off the series with Carol losing her one and only daughter, and now we're going to end with her finally finding her, right? I am ignoring all the other kids that she's taking care of over the years because they were all nuts anyways. Well, I guess no, Henry was a little more normal. Negan gave Lydia Alpha's mask, which was just amazing. This was just epic, and I'm so glad they did this because in the comic book that never happened. Actually, in the comic, we never really had this bond or relationship. Negan and Lydia had I don't even think they even shared a scene together, but it just makes so much sense. They are both villains to everyone. Of course they're going to bond together. When she wore it later in the episode, it was just so awesome. It messed with Beta a lot, but it was just so perfect. And then, yeah, the visuals of her chucking it over the cliff, that really signified that the Whisper arc was in fact over. Now, the plan, like I said, was to go into the Horde, which is what they all did. Negan was a little hesitant at first because he knew that, well, they would recognize him the second he went out there. But Daryl didn't care. He was like, you want to be a part of this? You got to put your ass on the line, which he in fact did for sure with his fight with Beta. Now, I do think their faces were a little too clean going through that Horde. I know it's the scent. I know walkers can't visually see that you're alive, right? But the Whisperers can, they can definitely notice that. And not everyone had masks, I know that, and it would be really hard for everyone to make masks, but this was No Way Out on steroids, right? This was definitely No Way Out on steroids because there was just so much more walkers. Walking through that Horde was very intense, but it didn't quite match the intensity of No Way Out, I would say. That was definitely, that was way more fun back then. It actually felt really scary going through that Horde, but yeah, it was still a very fun scene. Beta notices that arrows from Rachel and etc. were killing Whisperers in the crowd and decides to move the Horde. And that was a creepy scene, right? All the whispering and all that stuff to move the Horde to turn them in that direction. And this leads to Beatrice's death. One of the only deaths really in the episode, which actually bums me out quite a bit because there should have been way more, for sure. This cast is so huge. You're going into your final season. You gotta start killing off some characters. I mean, Beatrice who? Right? No one really knows who she is. She is recognizable for sure, but she's not really a main character. And usually I don't want characters to die, but no one's died for a while. We have a large cast. We're at this point where characters can for sure die. We're going into the final season. There should have been more deaths for sure. At least another character. Gabriel would have been fine. But I will say Beatrice's death was very savage. Just as everyone made it out of the Horde, Carol and her were still stuck in the Horde. And a Whisperer stabbed her, which led to walkers biting her, which is just so gruesome. And then she kept screaming out for Carol, but Carol was like, nah, you're the one who got stabbed. Come to think of it, did we see Rachel's reaction to Beatrice's death? I don't know if we actually even got that at all, but I'm sure that'll be a thing in those first, or the next 6 episodes, in episode 17. This leads them to burning down the house, and man, I think Daryl should have been dancing in that scene because I think that would have been my favorite scene of all time. He was already kind of smiling. I think it would have made a lot of sense. But the wagon gets destroyed, and then so they all need a new plan. And basically their plan is, we gotta lead these walkers over the cliff, but there's Whisperers here. That's gonna be impossible. So we gotta kill those Whisperers first. And that is what they do. Meanwhile, Gabriel, after keeping everyone safe from the Whisperers entering the building, decided he was going to sacrifice himself in epic fashion too. The music was very classic, it was very dramatic, and yeah, he was a priest with a shotgun, right? Killing the evil coming within. I think it was just badass, and that's really all I can say about it. Gabriel is just that great of a character that it was just so fun, and it didn't feel like he was going to die. It's yeah, they were setting it up like he was going to die, but I kept thinking there was no way he was going to die here unless Beta was going to walk in there, but it was a random Whisperer. You knew something was coming up. I had the feeling that something was going to come up right away. It wasn't set up like he was going to get stabbed right there and just die there. It just kind of made no sense. The way he fell down, the way that the music was kind of building up and stuff, you knew something was coming in right away. And that was Maggie. She showed up and saved him with the ninja guy. So the ninja guy was actually with Maggie all along. And yeah, this was Maggie's real introduction to the episode, I would say. She didn't have a scene in the opening minutes, but we already all saw that. This was a huge surprise for me. I had no idea that she was going to return in this way. We were all expecting Gabriel to die, And yeah, I was super happy when it happened that Maggie saved him or the ninja guy saved him. But looking back at it now, considering no one else died in the episode, I mean, Gabriel really should have died. And it probably should have been his comic book death. I think that would have been the most epic ending for his character. What happens during the Whisper War is Gabriel's in the tower, not a hospital, and walkers go through Alexandria, and Gabriel was trying to escape, falls off a ladder, gets stuck hanging upside down. Beta sees him, slices his stomach open with all of his guts pouring down to his body, his face, intestines, all this shit everywhere. It's one of the best deaths, I would say, from the comic book series, and I think it was a missed opportunity here. Again, everything still worked out really well. I am happy he lived. When the scene actually happened while I was watching, I was super happy, but just maybe other characters should have died then. Like, that's really my only criticism here, is that there just weren't any deaths, really. And if Gabriel was going to get saved, then someone else should have died, like maybe Jerry. We didn't get the ninja guy's identity revealed, but that's also fine because they just introduced him. This was actually his first appearance, was in this episode. You know, we got the teaser before, but this was his first appearance. So like, that's totally fine to not get that reveal right away. We'll get it in the next 6 episodes coming out in a few months, right? But yeah, he looks badass though. Doesn't really talk, kind of reminds me of Black Noir from The Boys. Now to talk about Beta's death. His death scene was just it was incredible. Definitely too short. Like when the early reviewers were saying that it was too short, I thought they meant maybe like a minute to like 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes or something. But like, no, this is really short. It's like 10 seconds. But his actual death was epic. And I think it makes a lot of sense. When you watch the scene, Beta handles Negan like Jason did to those 2 chicks in Jason X. Like, Beta can so easily kill Negan. He isn't a strong guy. You know, like Negan in the comics was tough. He was much bigger, and definitely that version of Negan can take on Beta, especially if he has Lucille, right? In the comic, he had Lucille. The show's version of Negan, there's no way. Even Daryl had a hard time, right? And Daryl's much bigger than him. That's why I think he held his own during their fight in season 9. However, like Daryl did have obstacles in the way. There was like blankets, sheets, they were everywhere, so he kind of hid behind things like that. I even said it back then, and I'll say it again now. If that fight was in an open field, Daryl would be dead. And this fight here in tonight's episode happened in an open field, but it was with Negan, who is definitely weaker than Daryl. And that's why Negan was about to die. That's why there was no fight, because Negan can't really fight Beta. There's just no way. It really was as simple as that. That's why the quickness of the fight kind of explains itself. However, you could have tried to make up for that, because that makes sense. And that's why I say this, because if Negan was holding his own against Beta, people would start criticizing that too, saying that, oh, that makes no sense. Negan's really frail. Beta's like this massive guy, and he can just take him on. So that's why I say the quickness of it makes sense, just because of their size, both of them fighting. Beta, like it was going to happen the way it happened in tonight's episode. But you could have tried to make up for that by him having Lucille, or some type of weapon, you know, something that could hurt Beta. Maybe he takes a few swings and it breaks or something like that. As long as, even if it was like 10 seconds more, it would have been just that much more worth it. But the thing is, you can't really do the whole thing with Lucille. First of all, he doesn't have Lucille, but he's just very different than his comic version, because in the comic, he is still very hung up on Lucille. And when Lucille broke on Beta's back, it just destroyed him. And it started this whole storyline of him mourning his wife. And we already got that on the show. You know, the show's version of this character already mourned his wife, and maybe there's still more things to come, but he's already gone over that. The original Lucille bat is gone. Like that was gone in the season 8 finale. That was 8 years ago as of this timeline now. Like there's no way you're going to find that bat again. I think it would be cool, but there's just, at this point, because they're not really addressing it, you know, I think that bat is gone. It's been 2 full seasons now, so he did have a bat, right, earlier this season, so they could have used that, but I don't know. I think that's a way it could have been better, but overall, I think the fight was amazing, mostly because of the death, because the death was just super awesome, right? Now, this is how you do Beta's death. Like, this is how you give justice to that character. After getting stabbed in the eyes by Daryl, Beta has these visions of his one true love, Alpha, and he sees these walkers, or I guess his fans, right, coming to him. And in his mind, all these walkers are his fans. They're all like caressing him and like, they just love him, and he's so happy, and he's loved, right? And that's why he has this smile on his face as they're eating him. He doesn't feel the pain. He just feels the love of the walkers because he thinks they're actual people and he's among them. This is like, that's the belief of the Whisperers, right? He's psychotic. That's why he has this huge smile, like almost like Joker-like smile as they're eating him. He doesn't feel the pain at all. Just the visuals of his bleeding eyes, his smile, the unmasking of him too as he's being devoured. It's just epic as hell. One of the best death scenes, in my opinion, for a villain to date. And I really mean it. It beats Shane's. Shane's is a little more emotional, but definitely beats Shane's. For sure beats the Governors, the Termites, the Wolves, the Saviors. The Saviors. Negan was technically still here, but yeah, and it definitely beats Alphas for sure. I was so worried that they were going to do his comic book death really wrong and just do it in the pathetic way they did it in the comics, or at least I thought it was really pathetic because he just cried and died in the woods from a knife wound because someone saw his face, and it was just, I don't know. And this was issues after he disappeared. Everyone thought, like, where is he? Is he going to come back for this epic arc and this and that? And then Aaron was the one to kill him, which was fine, but it was just how he died. It was just so sad. It was just like, wow, this character is just so pathetic, and he was introduced and it seemed like he was going to be like he was on the show, but never really ended up being the case. So the show definitely handled his character way better. Daryl was the one to kill him, but to be fair, he hasn't really killed anyone. And I actually did predict this. I said that it would either be Daryl or Lydia, and I leaned more on Daryl just because he can actually hold his own in a fight with Beta, right? But I will say, rest in peace, Half Moon. You're definitely a memorable character, one for the ages for sure. And I love this scene. Beta was just, well, actually, Negan, he realized who he was and he was like, wait, do you know who that bastard is? And Daryl's like, yeah, nobody. And I don't know how famous Beta was, but if he was like Johnny Cash or something like that, yeah, that would be freaky as hell, right? Like, I'm sure Negan listened to him and sung his songs all the time, right? Little did he know, years later, he'd be fighting him in a zombie war. Now we get to the ending of the arc, and the Horde is about to go over the cliff, and it does. Carol almost dies in one of the most beautiful scenes ever done. Like, I knew she wasn't going to die, obviously, but it was just the visual of it, and her wanting to die, and going over the cliff. And it was just, this whole arc was a very emotional arc for Carol, right? She has dealt with the most, like from losing Henry's death, right? To losing the kingdom, her home, losing her relationship because of all of it. She lost it all because of the Whisperers, and she was just ready to die here. But a former Whisperer anyways, actually saves her. And yeah, they just held each other behind some rocks and waiting for the Horde to go over the cliff. And they're like mother and daughter now, right? And that's why I say she found her daughter. The search for Sophia never ended for Carol, really, but maybe now it has. Now everyone reunites in the woods. We see Maggie's reunion with Judith, which was amazing. It was the exact reunion that it should have been because, they do go way back, and Maggie was there when Judith was born. We don't see Maggie spending a lot of time with her really ever throughout the series. Like early on you did, but not a lot later on. But still, like Maggie does remember, they do go back. It was obviously a very emotional time in Maggie's life because that was just, she was there when Lori died. And when Judith was born, it's a crazy moment for her. The one thing that was off, though, was just how Maggie completely ignored RJ. I just laughed. Like, watch that scene again. She doesn't even acknowledge his presence. Like, poor RJ, man. It's just so sad. And the Daryl and Carol scene, too, was really sad. It was really bittersweet. I felt pretty emotional watching this. Like they made up. They put it all in the past. They're together forever. No one can break that bond. And just the music playing over the whole entire scene, the whole ending here, it was just so masterful. And it really felt like the Whisper arc was done and finished. And I also felt that, like, because I knew that the show was ending, that every moment was just very bittersweet. It was just really emotional watching this. Daryl and Carol talk about New Mexico, which totally sets up their new show after this show ends in 2 years. But Carol says we still have things to do here. Until they don't. Yeah, just a very bittersweet moment here. Negan is also still here, and Maggie is very, very close. We don't get to see it in this episode, which was sad, but I wasn't really hoping for that anyways. Or I was hoping for it, but I wasn't expecting it. She's literally here in the woods right now with them. So yeah, they're just a little spread out, but they are very close. As soon as episode 17 happens, that's probably one of the first things that's going to come up, right? and it's going to get super intense fast. Like, enjoy this nice time and the peacefulness of the Whisperer arc being finished, because the next episode is going to end that, right? Because Maggie is going to be pissed off that he's allowed out, and I can't wait for that drama. But that was it, right? The Whisperer War is now over. The Whisperers are now over. And it was just such an incredible arc. Looking back at the last year and a half, 2 years, it was a very amazing arc, and one that we'll have to talk about more in the future, like, definitely. And yeah, that wasn't it though. Connie was found. She was super dirty, and I don't know how she survived, but Virgil finds her. And yeah, that's good. I can't wait to see her reunion with Daryl and with Kelly. I mean, because it's going to be really epic. Like, Carol and Daryl and Kelly, they've all kind of forgiven each other. Like, they're all getting along now. But how does Connie react to all of this, right? Like, how does she react to Carol? To me, Connie's the type of person that's just going to forgive her right away. She probably has already forgiven her or understands why Carol did that, right? So I don't imagine much is going to happen there. I think Carol will apologize and stuff, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. This was a nice reveal. I was worried that they weren't ever going to address Connie, but they did, thankfully. And then we get to the final scene, which sets up the very final season of The Walking Dead. And that starts with the princess telling Eugene that he's a horny dude. Which everyone laughed. And I mean, that was such a good laugh. Like, that's literally the Eugene character. His whole journey since the beginning has been to try and find a woman. Well, you're almost there, man. And then the lights come on, and then the Commonwealth arrive, and their armor looks amazing. The scene was it was really intense. Eugene was terrified, like, he was shaking and stuff there. And this is the final arc. The Commonwealth are here. This is a community of 50,000 people. This is the end game for The Walking Dead. And this is where it begins. Overall, this was a masterpiece of a finale. I do have my issues with the lack of deaths, the short Beta and Negan fight, but it still hit all the right emotions. There's not a lot to criticize. It could feel like the episode ends very quick and just everything happens so fast, but again, I think that's why you have to watch all the previous episodes, because it was building to this moment. This wasn't meant to be a standalone episode, just sadly, they had to release it like it was one, right? So I am very excited for what comes next. This was my favorite finale in a very, very long time. And I actually thought about this really hard. This is my second favorite finale of all time. Number 1 is still A from season 4. But this is number 2 for sure. Number 3, I think, would probably be like season 1 or 2. They would go in like 3 and 4, and then after that, my 5th favorite finale of all time could be season 5 potentially, maybe season 6 around there. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that a bit more, but for sure, this is number 2. But if you made it to the end, I want to say thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure to be a subscriber for more Walking Dead videos like this. My review for World Beyond will be coming out very soon, so make sure to post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.